Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into episode 2 of Strat Watch for winter 2024-25. So we brought Strat Watch back last week, and episode 2 is going to be basically the same as what we did last week. So we're going to look at the current situation in terms of stratospheric temperature. Then we're going to have a look at some forecast data for the stratosphere at 10 HPA, 60 degrees north over the Arctic and over the North Pole for the next few weeks. And then we will have a review of one of the classic winters of the past. We're going to have a review of that 78, 79, last time we had a sub-zero CET January, and we'll see what the Strat did during that winter. So it's going to be an interesting Strat Watch. I'll get on that for you in a moment. Just say that if you enjoy the content on the channel, please you like, share and subscribe. Thank you so everyone for doing that. For GavsWeatherVids, thank you so much everyone. Release a 6 AM forecast on day. You'll be live at 6 PM with your 10 to 14 there, and we might include ensembles watch in that as well. We'll see. Hold on. So sorry everyone, feeling a lot better with the throat and the voice today, thankfully. Right, okay, well let's start off with the situation at 10 HPA over the North Pole. This is from the JMA, of course, so the grey line is a trend line. The black line shows how temperatures have been performing and where the temperature currently is, 10 HPA in the stratosphere. So we're currently a little bit colder than average. We're slightly under the grey line. At this time of the year, we'd expect to be probably around minus 72, minus 73. Looks like we're somewhere around minus 75. So we're a couple of degrees colder than average, but not a particularly big deviation. 10 HPA in the stratosphere over North Pole. We go a bit lower down to 30 HPA though. There we see that the stratospheric temperature has gone really quite cold now, significantly under that grey line, and probably gone down to about minus 81 or minus 82. So it's colder, definitely at like 30 HPA it is at 10 HPA there. And this tells us that with such cold temperatures close to the troposphere, that's one of the reasons we've probably got quite a strong polar vortex at the moment. More about that a little bit later on. Well, this is from the GFS at Meteo Seal. These blue and purple colours are the cold temperatures at 10 HPA, 60 degrees north in the stratosphere over the North Pole. You see the coldest temperature actually out across Greenland, the North Atlantic into Northern Europe. There we are, around minus 80. But we do see also, as we go back into the pole itself at 10 HPA, we're around minus 75, minus 76, which does say it's a little bit colder than expected at this time of the year. Well, as we run through over the next few weeks, sorry everyone, we find quite a significant warming of the stratosphere gathering pace here. These green, yellow and slightly orange colours appearing over Siberia. That's lifting the temperature up about 30 or 40 degrees there next week over Siberia, which is quite a significant warming, but is short of what we would register as a sudden stratospheric warming. Into the extended range with this GFS run, we find that the warming continues, quite a sustained warming across Siberia, but really struggling to get into the Arctic, into the North Pole. So over the pole itself, we perhaps see a bit of a displacement of the polar vortex, the blue colours at their roots in the stratosphere, over towards the Canadian, North Atlantic and Northern European side of the Arctic. But most of the warming is kept towards Siberia, and by Christmas it looks like that particular stratospheric warming event is easing off. So definitely not a killing blow for the polar vortex, but a bit of a displacement event from a minor SSW that we see there with the coldest temperatures pushed out in towards North America, Canada, and into the North Atlantic and northern parts of Europe as well. So that gets us to Christmas. We can go even further out, though, with the ECMWF. This is the weekly mean temperature W forecast for 10 HPA. Helpfully, we have the North Pole itself indicated just here. There's the North Pole just there, and the wider Arctic Circle is around there. So this is for next week, the temperature anomaly for next week, taking us from the 16th to the 23rd of December, and you can see there's that significant warming of the stratosphere over Siberia, but short of what we would classify as an SSW. If I put in the temperature scale, you can see that we're going about 30 to 40 degrees above average into that deep pink shading. But I think when we get a genuine SSW, if we get one this winter, we will find this sort of yellow shading appearing here, 50 degrees or more above above average. So, you know, it is a significant warming strategy, don't get me wrong, but it is some way short of what we would classify as a genuine SSW. Anyway, let's run through, what are we doing? Let's run through to week 2. And you see that warming sort of moves around the edge of the Arctic in towards the far east of Siberia and northwestern Canada. Doesn't really infiltrate into the North Pole itself into week 2. Week 3 actually starts to cool things down. That's the 30th of December, 6th of January. Remember, blue colours are starting to appear, a bit of a stratospheric cooling taking place. Then that's week 5, and that's week 6. Not much of a suggestion of any further significant warming of the stratosphere up to the 13th to 20th of January. I suppose quite interesting is that we've got quite a large blue area just here in week 5, and that is kind of being pushed out a little bit towards Northern Europe and the North Atlantic into week 6. So this area through here might be an area to keep an eye on for another warming. It's like, well, that's 5 weeks away, but it's like 6 weeks away from when we're doing the video. So that's 5 weeks away from next week, but from this week, that's 6 weeks away. So, you know, it's a weak signal, but possibly that does indicate mid-January might have another go to warming the stratosphere over the Arctic and the North Pole. But that's a long way off, of course. We've got a lot of water to pass over the bridge before then. This is how the mean zone of wind is looking in terms of the extended forecast 10 HPA. So one way of looking at polar vortex is the depiction of the cold temperatures, of course, their roots in the stratosphere. Another way of looking at the stratospheric polar vortex is through the zone of wind. The zone of wind basically tells you how strong the stratospheric polar vortex is. At the moment, the polar vortex is very strong, almost for a date record strong, actually. A little bit hard to make now. This thick blue line just here does see a reduction through the middle part of December. So the stratospheric zone of wind will start to ease down a little bit, but still stronger than average. This red line is actually the climatology line. So by the time we get into January, we find that the ensemble mean, which is the thick blue line, has basically reached parity with the red line, which looks like the stratospheric polar vortex in terms of zone of wind will be about average. But that masks quite a lot of scatter, so we have got quite a lot of ensemble members that are going for a very strong polar vortex still into January. We have got quite a few that are weakening the polar vortex. Only a handful, but ascending zone of winds into reverse. Those will be ensemble blue members that are going for genuine. Sorry once more, everyone. Those would be ensemble blue members that are going for genuine SSW. Not many of those. But as I said, we do see quite a few ensemble members that are certainly weakening the stratospheric polar vortex in terms of zone of wind quite strongly. And so that is the reason I think that the thick blue line is on parity with climatology. It basically masks a 50-50 split between ensemble blue members that are still going for a very strong zone of wind and those that are going for a much weaker zone of wind down here. If we compare this to this time last week, so probably more ensemble blue members are actually going for a significant weakening of the stratosphere now compared to a week ago. But I would say it's probably not all that much in it. And we have got a lot that are going for a strong zone of wind as well. So there's barely been any progress in terms of a significant weakening or a reversal of zone of winds over the next 6 weeks from last week to this week. But then again, it's still very early in the winter. Of course, sudden stratospheric warmings get more likely as you go further on. through the winter. So January and particularly February, probably March as well, is when we see these warming events taking place more often than in December. So we'll keep monitoring, we'll keep you posted on developments, of course, over the next few weeks with further Strat Watches and important 14 days. Now, I did promise you that we'd have a review of what happened in terms of the stratosphere during the very cold winter of 1978-1979. So the last time we had a sub-zero CET January was so long ago now, back in 1979. I was 2 years old. I'm 47 now. That is how long ago it was that we had a sub-zero CET for the month of January. This is how the stratosphere looks during that winter. So we start off on the 1st of December, a cold stratospheric temperature really, with temperatures over the poles somewhere between around minus 17 and minus 76, so probably quite significantly cold on average as we begin that winter. Let's go in 5-day steps. So that's the 5th of December. Again, very cold stratospheric temperatures, particularly over the Atlantic and Northern European side of the North Pole. That's the 10th of December. 1978, and again pretty cold with stratospheric temperatures. Then we go on to the 15th of December, and a bit of a warming starting to take place over Siberia there, but quite modest. Really, the cold temperatures, either average or probably a little bit cold on average, continue over the North Pole itself. Let's go through to the 20th of December, approaching Christmas 1978. No warming of the stratosphere at this point. Bear in mind, we are getting very close now to the start of the big freeze. So what happened in December 1978 is that the month started quite cold with northerly and easterly winds. They relented, and it then turned into a very wet month. Actually, December 1978 was a very, very wet month with slow-moving areas and complex areas of low pressure. Led to, I think there was another cold snap around the middle of December, but it was a particularly cold month. And we get through to Christmas Day. Again, some modest warming is taking place over Siberia, but otherwise the polar vortex well and truly in business. Maybe slightly, above average in terms of the temperature there over the North Pole, but not a great deal in it. The polar vortex looks pretty well formed, and it's cold temperatures as well. But we've got 10 HPA. Certainly no SSW, no sun stratospheric warming preceding the freeze-up. So let's go on. So that's a very wet Christmas day, of course, very wet Christmas. But just after Christmas, when winter starts to bite. So by the time we get through to New Year's Eve, then we really are, in it. In the winter, there's a tremendous snowstorm happens just before the new year of 1978-79, particularly through lowland southern England. You see, there was, and that was produced by substantial, significant amounts of high latitude blocking around Greenland and also Scandinavia. Greenland and Scandinavian highs were both involved in the beginning of the freezing cold winter there around the new year. And you see that again, there's no particular warming of the stratosphere that is in evidence. We have got some warming happening over Siberia, looks quite modest, certainly nothing that's disrupting the polar vortex, particularly the temperature over the pole itself, probably somewhere around minus 75, minus 76, which is about average, maybe slightly colder than average, if anything. So certainly the start of this winter was not was not impacted by an SSW at all. Let's go through to January 1979 and see what happens as we get through into the last time I had a sub-zero CET January. Again, some warming over Siberia, but over the pole itself, no major significant warming of the stratosphere. Temperatures around minus 80 there on New Year's Day in the stratosphere around Greenland. You would normally think that would be associated with, a very strong polar vortex. It probably was a very strong stratospheric polar vortex, but obviously there's some sort of decoupling So, sorry everyone, there's probably some sort of decoupling that's happened between the stratosphere and the troposphere. So we've got high latitude blocking in the troposphere at this point. That's the boundary level of the atmosphere where it's taking place. But in the stratosphere, we've got, you know, probably a very strong polar vortex. So a decoupling happens during this winter, which is quite interesting. Let's go a bit further on. So that gets us to the 5th of January. Now perhaps a little bit more in way of warming beginning to develop over Siberia, but certainly over the pole itself, still looking pretty cold in most areas. 10th of January looks like that. Now we can get slight displacement then to the polar vortex, so the warming still quite modest over Siberia, gradually starting to infiltrate into the pole itself, beginning to displace the polar vortex out a little bit into more towards North America and the North Atlantic, perhaps. That's the 15th of January, so warming is starting to appear through the Atlantic now, quite an unusual place, and into southern parts of America. Just a bit of warming over towards Siberia. Gradually, the polar vortex looks like it's shrinking here, doesn't it? Just gradually shrinking down, rather than, you know, a dramatic killing blow. It's just gradually being weakened, I suppose, by these warmings around the edges. But that's the 20th of January. Again, we see no real sign of a major SSW here. The coldest temperatures, they are very cold, between minus 80 and minus 84, in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA pushed out towards northern parts of Europe. But so interesting that this winter is not driven by a major stratospheric warming. That's the 25th of January. So now we have got quite a significant warming happening over toward the Pacific side and the eastern side of Siberia. The polar vortex beginning to look much more weakened and stretched at this point. So is this an SSW beginning to gather pace, possibly? Definitely a shrinkage of and a displacement of the polar vortex there to the 27th of January. Of course, what we don't know is what's happening at 30 HPA while this goes on, because this just showed us the 10 HPA boundary level. That's the 30th of January. Looks like another warming is gathering pace here through Europe and into southern parts of Russia as well. Let's head on into February, the last month of the winter. So now it looks like we're getting a genuine SSW taking place. Now it's the 1st of February. We've just passed the last sub-zero CET January, so but very cold, you know, heart of the winter in January was not stratospherically driven. However, it does look as though we are now beginning to see an SSW. That is the 1st of February. 79 into the 2nd of February, that warming is gathering pace. Look how much weaker and shrunken the polar vortex is now looking as it's pushed out into the North Atlantic. Definite signs of an SSW there on the 3rd of February, 4th of February 1979. Oh wow, now that is a proper, that's what we're looking for, those deep red colours to start appearing. So this is a genuine SSW that is taking place here in early February of 1979, and that intensifying further by the 5th of February and starting to infiltrate into the North Pole as well. That is the 6th of February. I would assume by this point the zone of wind has almost certainly reversed. And again, we see very dramatic warming of the stratosphere over particularly Siberia, but also penetrating in towards the North Pole as well. 7th of February 1979. Yes, you know, we've reversed the zone of wind, I'm sure, at this point. Let's go through to the 8th of February. And again, you see those deep orange and red colours sitting over top of the pole. Polar vortex being pushed out into northern Europe, but it's still there to some degree. It's not a complete obliteration, such as we see with some SSWs of the polar vortex. But you know, compared to how the PB looked in December '78, so much more weaker and shrunken there as we go through the first half of February 1979. So obviously, you know, a full southern stratospheric warming has taken place here, major SSW has occurred, and that gets to the 15th of February. That gets us to the 20th of February 1979. So the polar vortex is still just about in business, but you know it looks very ragged, and it it really has been put through the ringer by that major sudden stratospheric warming event. That's 25th February, when another significant warming of the stratosphere is taking place. It's a very cold spring that we had in 79. A lot of people forget that about this winter, but not only was it a really cold winter, severely cold winter, 78, 79, but spring of 79 was also very cold and often very wintry as well. That is 28th of February, last day of winter 78, 79. The winter discontent looks like that, and you know, you see yellow and green colours over the pole. Polar vortex is pretty much finished by this point. It's split. It's been, you know, basically destroyed by the end of this winter after being really put through the ringer. But it is very interesting that happens through the latter part of the winter. That happens, you know, happens in February, and January was a very, very cold month. As I say, the last time I had a sub-zero CET January was when I was 2 and a bit years old in 1979. I'm 47 now. That is how long ago it is that we had a January with a sub-zero CET, and that January was not stratospherically impacted. You know, that happened without any major warming of the stratosphere taking place, certainly not a sudden stratospheric warming and reversal of zonal winds. So that happened purely through a decoupling of the stratosphere to the troposphere, which is something that we saw also in December 2010. We'll review December 2010, you know, another time. But that December to November, also had no notable warming of stratosphere. So we don't need necessarily an SSW to get very cold weather. A lot of people think, you know, that if we don't get an SSW, we can't get very cold weather. That's not the case. We can, you know, as we've just proven, get extremely cold and very snowy conditions in northern and western Europe without an SSW. And equally, when we get an SSW, sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get a lot of cold weather out of it as well. And that's particularly true if we only have a displacement type SSW rather than a split of the stratospheric polar vortex as well. Anyway, that's your little trip down memory lane. We'll have another review of another classic winter next week, 62, 63, 46, 47. There's quite a few that we can do. We go all the way back to 1940 with this. So, yeah, you know, another review will be coming up for one of those classic cold winters next week. Some of them are stratospherically related, some of them aren't. So we'll just go through the classics. Right, okay, well, if you enjoyed Strat Watch episode 2, please give us a like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we're going to be back at 6 o'clock live streaming the chain of 14 there. We'll have a bit of a chat about winter forecast as well. So I see a bit later on for that. For episode 2 of Strat Watch, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.